evening. Thanks for joining us this evening for our Truth and Taxation hearing. Majority hearing from the public, giving input. We have no intention to make a decision. Digest the information we have and take this item up in our next council meeting. But it's important that we hear from you to make sure we've considered everything as we enter into our final budget stages. We'll have an invocation of pledge of allegiance tonight by Robert Bowler. So, Robert, if you're going to give an invocation and lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this opportunity to be here as residents. We're thankful for all that God's given us. We're grateful for this fine city and this free land. We pray, Father in heaven, that we will be able to discuss the financial matters of the city, and we'll be able to have clear understanding and communication as we do so. We pray, give thanks, and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. I'd like to excuse Councilman Swanson this evening. He somehow got his family vacation in Mexico crossed up with tonight's event. So we'll miss him tonight, but I would like to excuse him. We'll start on our agenda tonight. First of all, we will have public comments. I would invite those who'd like to make comments to come up to the microphone. I would ask that you state your name and if you're a North Ogden resident. And I'd ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes, if you would, please. So we'll now open up for public comments. Those who'd like to make any are welcome to come to the microphone. John, do we have any, are we connected with Zoom or?
We are on Zoom. We don't have any hands raised, and obviously during the public hearing, people will be able to comment on the taxation purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are joining us electronically through Zoom, if you would either type into chat your comments and John will read those, or if you raise your hand, I will make sure you're heard. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to comment on the tardiness. The meeting was supposed to start at 6 o'clock, and none of you were ready to start at 6 o'clock. It was 6:06.
Yes, if you'd like to make comments, you can come to the microphone, but we did have technical difficulties, which were unexpected earlier, so that was the reason.
None of you were sitting here at 6 o'clock.
That's true, because I don't think we were ready at 6 o'clock because of
You
technical
should have still been
difficulties.
sitting at your seats.
Thank you.
State your name, please.
Deborah Grushko.
Are there any other public comments this evening before we enter into the truth and taxation? All right, at this point in time, John, if there's none on those who have joined us electronically, I would like to open up our truth and taxation public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments on maintaining the property tax rate that's currently in effect, which would result in a $1 increase in citizens' taxes. Perhaps I could go through a couple of slides before we actually get into the public hearing, just to give you a little information to consider in your comments. This meeting is required by law. Anytime there's an increase in the amount of tax dollars collected on property taxes in the county, there's a requirement to have a public hearing on truth and taxation. So that's why we're here this evening. Okay, John, next slide. I just want to talk a little bit about historical values and some of the taxes. This is information over the last 10-year period of time. In our city, the average home value has increased approximately 58% in that 10-year period, with a substantial portion of that just happening within the last year. I think we've all recognized what's happened with home values, good on one side, difficult on the other side. I believe I heard something the other day that the average house increase in Weber County was 31% increase in value in the last year. The average taxes paid on your county tax bill during that same period of time has increased 22%. The average taxes paid in North Ogden from 2010 2020 has increased 18%. So you can see that home values have far outpaced, the increase in taxes both at the county and the city level. John, next slide. So you probably already received your tax bill, your preliminary tax bill from the county. The county issues those. It shows you what your taxes were last year. It shows what your taxes would be this year without any adjustments in the budget. And then it shows what your tax bill would be with adoption of certain budgets. This is a little bit difficult to read, but I think the thing we want to point out here is that the North Ogden city taxes you pay represents about 10% on average of your tax bill. For example, and we'll have a live example here in a minute, but if your total tax bill is $3,000, the average tax that goes to North Ogden City to operate for the entire year is about $300. You can see the other breakdown. Weber County gets about 24%. The sewer district, which sets their own rates, gets about 5%. Northview Fire gets about the same as the city, about 9%. But you can see the big portion of your tax bill goes to Weber School District and the statewide school fund to fund education. Next slide, John. So this is an actual tax bill of a resident here in North Ogden. And you can see here, I believe, John, residential's, is it a 45% exemption and it's taxed at 55% of value? So this particular property last year's market value was assessed by the state was $407,000. The taxable value with that exemption of 45% was taxed at $223,000. You can see this year's market value went from $407,000 to $485,000. Basically a 20% increase in the assessed value of this home. So this year's taxable amount is $266,750. So John, if you could slide this down now, we'll go through the taxes. I don't know if you can make that any smaller, John, so we can see the whole thing.
Yeah, we can zoom back out.
And then you can zoom back in after we go through the detail here. What we've highlighted here on the tax bill, where it says North Ogden City, you can see last year's tax rate was 0.001180, resulting in this resident paying $264.14 of taxes to North Ogden. Now, if we don't keep the rate the same, and what the county does is they do their best estimate of reducing the tax rate so the city collects approximately the same amount of dollars. So if you look at the information that was sent out to us from the county this year, you can see the rate they proposed was 0.001022, which would result in $272.62 of taxes. Pretty much the same as last year, but an increase because of the assessed valuation. So what we're proposing this year is to keep the rate at 0.0118, which is the same rate that was certified by the county last year. By doing that, taxes will go up to $314.77 to the city, or an increase of about $42 on a house that's assessed at $487,000. We'll go through the average assessed value in our city here in a minute. So that's a 15.46% increase in the taxes going to North Ogden. You can also see that there's other adjustments in taxes from negative 6.93% up to 16% in regards to the dollars collected. So John, if you would now kind of take us back to a little bit, you can see all the different entities here. So of the tax increase here of $314, is that what I indicated? You can see that the majority of the increase is in the Weber School District and the statewide school basic levy. The taxes go from $935 last year to $1,024 on this home for the Weber School District. And it goes from $364 to the statewide school base, from $364 to $343. The increase to the fire district is about the same as the increase to the city. And once again, the fire district sets their own taxes and has their own hearing. So you can see the different entities that are receiving your tax dollars there, with the largest dollars amounts, of course, supporting the school system, followed by the state charter school levy. The one below that is Weber County at $385, and then $264 last year. And you can just go across from 2020 to 2021 with no budget increase and the proposed budget amount that we'll be talking about tonight. So, as I mentioned earlier, the tax on this home this year would be $3,299, with $314.17 going to the city. Next slide, John. So you heard me talk about maintaining the rate. Next slide, John. So last year, as I pointed out, our tax rate was 0.00118. This year, we're planning on holding the rate the same at 0.00118. Last year, in 2020, the average home value in our city was $329,000. So after the 45% exemption I talked about, this home, which is the average home value, would have paid $213.52 in taxes. So let's go to this year. The average home value in North Ogden jumped from $329,000 to $389,000. And that's assessed by the county assessor. That's not done by the city. So you can see that the average increase in a home in North Ogden, 18.23%. So what does that result in? It results in an increase in taxes as a percentage of 18.23%. Because the increase in the value of the home, the tax rate stays the same. So this individual would go from paying $213 to $252. And this represents an average resident. So basically $39 a year in increased taxes on an average home size valued in North Ogden. Okay, John, let's go to the next one. So let me just talk about our 2021 property tax ordinance that was passed by the city council. So each year, as you're aware, the council reviews the needs of our public safety department. The ordinance I'm referring here requires all money collected in property taxes by the city to be expended on public safety. So all property tax is used to fund our public safety. And in a minute, I'll show you that property tax is far short of funding that on its own. So if property tax were to ever exceed public safety needs, then we reduce our property tax. However, in the spirit of full disclosure, right now, property taxes cover just a little bit over 50%. This year, it'll jump up a little bit if the tax increase goes into effect. But it funds just a little bit over 50% of the budget for our police department. So you can see it will be quite a long time before property taxes exceeded the public safety budget. So as we sat down this year and we looked at the needs of our police department and public safety, first of all, we were thrown a little bit of a curveball. Because when we did our original budget and we were looking at holding the rate steady or not, we had some options there. But I'm not sure if you're aware, Salt Lake City increased the starting wage of their police officers by $5 an hour. Does anyone know what an average, we start our police officer at in North Ogden, what their base salary is? $20.93, I think, this year is what a police officer starts at. So what's happened here, because Salt Lake and other surrounding police departments increased the wage of their police officers, we're faced with the same situation. So to retain and attract police officers, we've got to make an adjustment to their salaries that we weren't expecting at the time we did our tentative budget. As you know, it's no secret our city is growing. That's one of the biggest things that the city is having to deal with is the growth in our city. North Ogden was identified as the 5th safest city in the state of Utah. We have with us Lieutenant Crowther and our police chief tonight. And I have the opportunity to get a report from the chief during our staff meetings on almost a weekly basis. I don't think it would be a surprise to you that we're seeing crime increase in our city. Just a natural occurrence as population increases. So is crime, unfortunately. I'm proud of our police department because they do what I call proactive policing versus reactive policing. Now you may say, what is proactive policing? Our goal is to keep as many criminals out of our city as we can. So when our police are out making stops for legitimate reasons, they're not doing that to issue citations. They're doing that to check for outstanding warrants and to see if there are illegal firearms being carried by restricted people. The message we're trying to send is if you come into our city, the probability of you getting caught is great. Now, as our city grows and crime increases, we need to increase our police force. So we've asked, the police chief has asked to have an additional officer. We have about 1 officer per 1,000 people. Our population, I think, in the last census was 21,827 people. We have, with our new officer, do we have 22 now? 21. So you can see we're under 1 officer per 1,000. The average in America is between 2.2 and 2.5 officers per 1,000. Chief Quinney is simply asking to keep our force growing at the same rate that our city is. So we've asked for an additional officer. Because crime is increasing, and frankly, the judicial system, in my opinion, is overwhelmed right now. Trials are backed up. The jail has COVID problems. We need a victim's advocate, somebody that represents the victim in the judicial system. So we have a part-time. We've asked to increase that to a full-time. And then anytime you have an additional officer, you need equipment and vehicles for that officer. Additionally, we have an obligation to keep our police force safe. And so we want to make sure that they have the proper equipment. We're not being extravagant, but we want to make sure our officers are safe. So I just wanted to give you a little background on property tax and our public safety department. John? So let me just go through the revenues that would result, what the city gets in regards to property taxes collected and the related expenses this year in regards to our public safety department. Last year, we collected just under $1,480,000 in property taxes. That's what the city collected. If the rate is held constant this year, we will collect $1,795,000. So you can see it's about a $316,000, just under $317,000 increase. So the breakdown of that is $88,000 came from new homes and businesses in the city. $228,000 would be the amount collected from existing homes and businesses. And businesses contribute about 10%, just under 10% of our taxes. So you can see that we don't have, as I go over here on the other side, the $316,000 that we're asking to collect in additional property taxes this year is inadequate to cover the things on the right here, which is police salaries and benefits. That includes one new officer and a full-time victim advocate, and making an adjustment to our police, not the $5 that Salt Lake did, but an amount that would keep us competitive in maintaining and recruiting officers. When we have to hire a new officer in today's environment, there's not a lot of experienced officers coming into our city. So oftentimes we have to put them through post-training. We have to have them in an emergency vehicle training. They're spending time with another officer on the street. The chief tells me that it costs us basically over $100,000 to get an officer up to speed. It's a lot cheaper to pay our officers competitive wages and keep them here. The motor pool increase for the new vehicle, all the vehicles go into kind of one pot, and then we allocate out the cost to them. You can see the new vehicle for the officers, $16,000. We make a contribution to the Weber County Strike Force. They're asking for $19,000 this year. New equipment for the officers, $20,000. So you can see we're anticipating collecting $316,000 and spending $375,000. So the property tax potential increase doesn't cover that. And once again, we don't pay our officers extravagantly. We just want to be in the market in that regard. John, next.
Sorry, you're looking for this one. It's not as pretty. I'm sorry. I forgot to get it into the
That's no problem.
slide.
You can see that the 2021 police department budget is $2.9 million to $2,964,000. Property tax collected if the holding the rate steady is approved by the council would result in a collection of just under $1.8 million. So you can see that property tax, even with the increase, is about 60% of our budget. The point I want to make here is any amount of property tax increase that's approved by the council is going to be spent on public safety and nothing else. And we feel like that is our number one responsibility as your government officials, is to make sure that we keep this city safe. And I would just say, and I don't want the police officers here to think that this is that the mayor's become real liberal, but the fact of the matter is, I don't believe that this is the end of police salary increases. With what's going on in the country and the attitude of a lot of people about policing, it is hard to get people and it's hard to keep people. And I think all of us know the situation we're in right now with inflation everywhere. You go to the grocery store, inflation, right? Go to fill up your car, inflation. you hear time and time again, the inability of people to, companies to be able to hire people. They can't find them. Somebody told me that you can almost get $15 an hour now flipping hamburgers at McDonald's. So if I'm someone and I get $20 being a police officer, $15 flipping burgers, the risk reward is substantially different. But we're not only going to be faced with this, frankly, with our police officers. Salary pressures are happening just about everywhere. So our commitment is to continue to be conservative, fiscally responsible, but to not have, what's the term you use, Council Member Extra? Detrimental frugality, which means that by trying to be too cost conscious, we actually hurt the city in the long run. Sometimes short-term decisions have long-term ramifications. So in any event, we just wanted to share that information with you. And so at this point in time, I would open the floor for a public hearing on our truth and taxation, and would invite comments and questions. Once again, if you would come to the microphone, state your name, and if you're a resident of North Ogden, we would appreciate it. And if you try to keep your comments limited to 3 minutes, it would be good. So the meeting is now open for public hearing on our proposed tax increase.
Yeah, my name is Mike Kincannon. I'm a resident here in North Ogden. And not to diminish the requirements that you put forth, but the inflated value of our homes does not coincide with what I would get for a retirement. Now, I don't know how many residents in North Ogden are retirees that, we're on basically a fixed income. There's no way that in 1 year I see a 15% increase in my retirement. I'm lucky if I'm going to get maybe 6% this year. So, and it's not just the city, the entire county. They're working with inflated numbers that don't reflect the people that are living in these cities. Yeah, I can sell my home, but where do I go? So, I mean, just take that into consideration. I realize that, what you've said up there is probably fully justifiable, but on the other side of the coin, the people that are going to pay this bill are not really in a financial situation where they can. They may have a home that's worth a fortune, but to maintain that home is costing a fortune also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brett Hamlin. I live here in North Ogden. I want to say I understand quite a bit. I've watched a number of years here, the council meetings and budget meetings, and seen all the numbers and so forth. As much as I hate any kind of an increase, I definitely agree with maintaining the rate and for the purposes it's going to. Definitely agree with that. And I only have one question. I think you answered it, but just to make sure, that the tax valuation that I got from the county, when it's under the proposed budget column, reflects the maintaining the rate in North Ogden?
John, do you want to go back to that slide so I can show him? Is that a no, John?
I do. I'm just clicking through.
Well, I'm pretty sure you said that.
Yeah, when you see the proposed budget amount over there, right under 2021, that does include the increase from the 272 in this case to the 314. The far right-hand column will tell you what the change is, the $42. So the proposed budget amount does include holding the rate steady at 0.01180.
Yeah, I thought I understood that.
Yes.
But just wanted, thank you.
Hi, Meg Sanders, North Ogden resident. North Ogden has Cadillac taste. And so we want the best of everything. We want flowers, we want pool. We need a bigger building for our police. We want an amphitheater. We want all sorts of things, and we have to pay for it. So if people don't want property taxes to increase, there's an election coming up. Start asking the question, who wants to bring more people into North Ogden? Who wants to add because it'll lower the property tax? It won't. I grew up in Clinton. They told my parents forever, the more we build, the more businesses we bring, your property taxes will drop. That's just not the case. Look at Clinton. They're overrun with businesses and their property taxes aren't lower. And again, if North Ogden doesn't want their property tax to go up, stop buying so much stuff. Stop wanting so much stuff. So get what you need. Please building.
Bob Buswell, resident of beautiful North Ogden. I have a question. How much, if this taxation does go through, how much will the police officers get as an increase?
Bob, the council hasn't approved it yet because we've got to have the money before we approve it. But I think I mentioned here is that $196,000 would be the amount in its aggregate for police salaries and benefits. As you know, the public safety officers' retirement, at least those who have been around for a long time, is fairly substantial. I think, John, was it 37% of salary goes to, I mean, it's pretty substantial, isn't it, that goes to the URS?
The total benefit package for officers is closer to 45%.
I'm just talking about the retirement portion that goes into URS.
Yep, 35, Jamie says.
Okay, 35%. So you can see that 196,000 includes benefits, which would be, retirement, unemployment benefits, all those things. So we've got a proposed number, Bob, on an hourly increase, but I think it would be probably inappropriate to share that. I'll share the total amount because the council hasn't approved that yet, and I would hate to have officers think that that's been approved. Like us, it's, as soon as you get the raise, it's kind of, you know where you're going to spend it. So we're just kind of holding on that. But it's in total with salaries and benefits, about 196,000, 192,000.
Thank you.
Deborah Brushville, North Ogden. First of all responders should get a lot more money. I'm sorry, I stuttered. Should get paid a lot more money than they do. So first responders and officers. Can we go back to the pie? How it's broken down?
Yes.
Who determines that as far as like the education? Who determines how that's broken down?
Each entity, I think, submits to the county their tax rate of needed dollars. So each entity up there, like the school district, would set theirs, the fire department would set theirs.
Okay, I have nothing against education. Education should get a lot of money, but I don't have any children in school. And maybe we should cut back on education. Nothing against education. Maybe they could get 45%, and we could give 5% more to the police department. That would help. When we could do something like that.
We did have the superintendent come and visit with us our last council meeting. I think he indicated they're issuing a 200, and they're going to propose the issuance of a $270 million bond to build schools. The high schools, I guess, both Weaver and Fremont have excessive students. They want to go to junior high. And I believe, was it 2 elementary schools?
Well, they're always going to say that. They're always going to, with more people coming here, there's more children.
Yes.
But you know what? We need more police officers to help, with the crime that's going to be coming here. So let's back off some of the education because we're still going to get help with the education. Let's help with the police department.
Yes,
First responders.
yeah, and, you know, I'm like you, most people know this, I'm now on fixed income.
So
I can't- And I don't have any kids in school anymore. I do have grandkids in school, but I think the average social security check was about $1,600. The gentleman was pretty close, they're talking a 5 or 6% increase. So the average increase would be a little over $1,000, I believe, in an increase in Social Security. That's before they increase Medicare. So being on a fixed income is difficult, but I do think that the increase, I don't know if it'll cover everything that's going up, but it's probably one of the larger increases I think we've had since 2008. I would just say this, I've always been perplexed about what school teachers get paid and what first responders get paid. But yet we're willing to spend $20 and $30 million a year on somebody that provides entertainment for us. I've always thought that's a little bit backwards, but we can only control those things that we have control over. So did that answer your question? Each one of those sets their own budget and the need for property taxes. So we only have influence basically in the North Ogden City. We do have a little bit of influence in the Central Weaver Sewer District because you know, our mayor does sit on that board along with other mayors, but the rest, we have basically nothing to do with that. So thank you for your question.
I don't have any on chat or anything, Mayor.
Okay. Jeanette?
I'm Jeanette Sweet. I live in North Ogden. I just want to say ditto to some of the things that have previously been said, especially in North Ogden, need versus wants, including necessities versus wants. When we're talking about the school budget and the schools, the education, teachers should be paid more. First responders in particular should be paid more. These are people that are willing to lay their life down for our citizens. And crime is going to go up here, and that police department needs to be funded properly and staffed properly. When it comes to needs of the soul, like the amphitheater and flowers down the boulevard, etc., those are more luxury items. I understand that they bring kind of a temperament to the community, but we need to focus on necessities and needs, and then the wants come down afterwards. And if we have to come back on those wants to be able to properly fund law enforcement, first responders, fire department, the people you're going to want there when your child or husband's laying on the floor, your house is on fire, you're getting a break-in. Those things need to be addressed. And I think those things need to be assessed, reassessed every year. Which things of the luxury end of things can we cut down on or dispose of completely? Education in the schools is important. Teachers deserve to be paid. The curriculum needs to be up to speed, but they don't need all the bells and whistles in the school. The buildings can be built and still educate our students. Thank you.
Now your chance.
Margaret Swannell, and I am a resident of North Ogden. I'm curious to know, do we have any part-time policemen, or are they all full-time? I don't know how salaries vary between part-time and full-time. I don't know if that's a solution or not.
Chief, so I don't misspeak. I think our sworn officers are all full-time. We have a victim advocate and our code enforcement officer, but I think she's referring to officers that are out on the street.
All of our sworn officers are full-time.
The chief said all of our officers are full-time. The amount of training that we have to put into officers probably warrants full-time. Now, one of the things I was talking, I can't remember, I had a little meeting with Jeanette this morning, so I don't know if it was her or not, but, you know, I remember we used to have a pretty vibrant neighborhood watch program. And people took it seriously. We also have the volunteer, it's called VIPS, I think, isn't it, Chief? So we're looking at trying to supplement with some of those things. But basically, the amount of training, a lot of these officers have, you know, families to support. So we've been seeking full-time officers. However, we have some part-time workers in the city. And from their perspective, they're saying, just because we choose to work part-time doesn't mean we shouldn't be paid the same. We're doing the same work while we're here and benefits, just because they choose that situation and the job allows it. So we're actually looking at what we can do to attract part-time. I think it'd be very difficult in the police department. Chief, do you see anything that would
And Donaldson, North Ogden, we commented about part-time officers. I have a son that works for the county jail. Need part-times for Pleasant View. 2 days a week, like you get as much as you want, but he's fully trained. And so there'll be a lot of training spent on part-time. It might be wise to look at that because there's other departments that would be willing to people working for us to come, because my son was willing to work in Pleasant View.
Chief?
Well, there are times and circumstances where it would be beneficial to have part-time employees. And I can tell you, for a smaller department like Pleasant View, it is often beneficial because of leave for their full-time coverage. And to get somebody on vacation, it's very difficult to cover a 24/7 police department with department without part-timers. So you can just call in and fill. With the part-timers, you still have the commitment issue. The turnover is multiplied 10 times compared to a part-timer or a full-timer, and you still have the training expenses, maybe not as much, because they could come with some training, but we still would have an MTO program for a newly hired part-time employee that would almost resemble a full-time. So the cost for the extra turnover, I think, would, if we had a smaller department and we had coverage issues and we could give people time off, then I would be the huge advocate for part-timers. But we don't have, we're large enough.
Okay, so the size of the department is diminished our need for that. John, let me, if we had the example like Glenn talked about, we had a part-time sheriff deputy come and work, a full-time sheriff deputy work part-time in our city, but we still have to make the contribution to URS because they're in the system.
We do make the URS contribution. We don't do leave and some of the other benefits, but
Right.
we do URS.
Which is 37%, 35%. So there's some savings there. So hopefully that answers your question.
Can I ask a question for Quinn?
If you want to come up here.
What's the possibility of bringing retirees back on in part-time status? In addition to which, if we have part-timers that are on board and you've got a situation where you need them to work additional hours above what they're on to do, then we wind up paying what, overtime? So there's additional expenses that go with that, but they get utilized in a more extensive way. Is that not correct? Yeah.
I'll try and answer that. If I understand your question right. So any part-time we've had, it would be hard to give a commitment to any certain day of the week, any hours of that day. Say we said graveyards on every Sunday night, we want a part-timer to fulfill that position, so we don't have to have a full-timer committed to it, and the extra expense that comes with it. We'd have a hard time getting somebody to commit to that day of the week, those hours of that day, the way we can with full-time. has a set schedule. And that's when I talk about commitment, that's the issue I see is covered.
We can at least look at it and see if there's some opportunities, so I appreciate the comment.
Linda Weber from North Ogden. And I just want to take a minute and thank all of you, our police department, our fire department, for all they do for us. I feel so safe living here in North Ogden. All you need to do is read the newspaper and see all the things that are happening 5 miles that way. We're just so much safer here. And I just want to thank all of you for the wonderful job you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other comments?
I'm Ivan Barker, Ryan's uncle. North Ogden resident for 72, almost 3 years now. So yeah, I'm fixed income, but when you say Salt Lake will pay their officers roughly $4 to $5 an hour more.
They just increased it, I think, $5 an hour.
So if the officer lives here and drives there and back, 20 miles to the gallon, he's got 5 gallons of gas, $4 a gallon, that's $20. So he's burned up $2 of those dollars or so just to get to work and back. And then, like said, if he's a realtor, I've heard the average house now in Salt Lake is $550, for us is $400,000. So we can't afford, so we'll go backwards if we move. So just want to be, a little bit of a devil's advocate here. Sometimes if you can pay a little less and you reap the benefits of a cheaper place to live. And I would say, yeah, they're doing a good job too. I don't know if I can go $5 an hour with them, but I can go 2, and I'm thinking that evens things out to what it would be.
Good points. I've only just asked this. I know when I used to commute back and forth from Salt Lake, I would see officers in Salt Lake police vehicles commuting. I don't know how that works, but it seems like they were commuting back and forth in Salt Lake County, somewhere else. And Ivan, your point is well taken, but I've got to tell you that Salt Lake's not the only one increasing wages. So what happens is if Riverdale increases their wages, because the drive might not be as far, or Farmington does, it just kind of rolls and makes that a little bit closer. And, somebody said, I think one of my kids told their friends, the only thing tighter than their dad was a pair of Wranglers. So I'm very fiscally conservative, but I'm just telling you, I just don't think it's fair that we ask these fine men and ladies to go out and put their lives on the line every day for $22 an hour. I just struggle with that. Maybe I struggle with it because the officer that was recently killed in Ogden was one of the employees prior to becoming a police officer in the company I worked for. And he was just doing his job, approaching a door, and some evil person decided to shoot through the door. So I'm saying, even if your analysis is right, Ivan, I just don't know if that's fair to these folks to ask them to do that. But you see my point, it kind of like a rolling wave. It starts there, and it just keeps rolling south and north. And so we'll watch it closely, and we won't be extravagant. The amount of hourly raise the council has in mind is not $5. I can tell you that, but it's a fair amount in my mind.
Stephanie Casey, North Ogden resident. I just wanted to stand up and say thanks for explaining this so detailed. I know that I've got a lot of questions and it's hard to figure this out. I think that we really need to take care of our police. It's not fun that we're in this position. I don't think bonding is great, but we're in a bad spot. We've taken care of wants, and we have some great wants in the city, and we need to really look at our needs. Our officers working out of a building that was built as offices in the 60s is just not acceptable at all. So I just want to say that I support police and taking care of them, and anyway, thank you for your work. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else here this evening that would like to make comments? We've had some good input this morning.
Sharon Even, I'm North Ogden resident, and I feel like that $13.38 increase between last year and this year, if it's approved, that's probably only 2 times eaten out if you're eating cheap. I think most anybody can do that, cut out a time of eating out or going to the movie or whatever, and I think that the proposal is a good one. I might like it.
Thank you. Anyone else before we close the public hearing? We appreciate your input. I want to commit to you that we'll give those things consideration. We are not going to have the council vote tonight on increasing the taxes. We will give ourselves some time to think about it. And in our next council meeting, we have some deadlines. We have to approve the budget, and make decisions so the county can get prepared to issue the final tax notices. So the next council meeting, we will be taking a vote on what to do in this regard. Seeing no further comments, council, I'd ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Have a motion by Council Member Stoker and a second by Council Member Severie. Is there any further discussion, council? Seeing none, then all in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is now closed, but I want to give one more chance for any public comments this evening.
Sorry, guys. I used to work in emergency management here locally. And so when the Washington Terrace tornado went through, that all agencies responded to that, and it backed up 911 calls 4 hours because of the minimal complement with each of the different cities, taxpayers' costs considered, and people not wanting to overpay for excessive complement of first responders. But a situation like that, and then just around in July, when there was a backyard fire over in Pleasant View, it was stated that it took 3 different fire departments and 2 different police departments just to manage that one backyard fire and make sure that the rest of the city was okay. So part of this travel back and forth that you may see Salt Lake City cars coming and going may very well have to do with interaction between different communities and mutual aid that's being offered between these communities and training and cooperation that has to occur so that these different agencies can work together. And so all of that goes into some of this travel and paying for their travel. And that's why these vehicles may be commuting from Salt Lake City and back and forth so that they can be up to speed, they can coordinate. The chief meeting with the governor, the mayor meeting with other representatives talking about what they need to do. These are really important things that need to occur here, and this is only going to continue to grow. And we need to flip this triangle upside down and really start paying the people who matter. And my dad, when he thought he was having a heart attack, hadn't had police right there, it could have been a whole different story. And so when you take one police officer on vacation out of the mix, you've still got to fill that slot somehow. And like I said, these people are here putting their lives on the line for us for a very minimal amount. And we owe them the respect of that. And thank you to the council for your work towards that.
And Ashdown, I live in North Ogden. I have 2 concerns. As far as the travel, 401 only paying our police officers $20 an hour, and they have a couple of kids at home, they cannot afford to buy a house in North Ogden. I'm sorry, they can't. And the other thing, as far as part-time, we have part-time police officers, we still want to make sure that they're trained. And I think it would be really unfair of us to say, you work part-time, but we're not going to cover you with insurance because you're only part-time, but we want you to come and protect us when we need you. I don't think that would be very efficient on our part. Thank you.
Anyone else have a comment? I don't want anyone to leave here tonight thinking that we're trying to put fear in you to feel good about a tax increase. That's not our motivation. I think it's just a reality that, costs are going up. Crime is going up, but I don't want anybody to think we're trying to make people feel good about paying more money out of fear. These are facts that we're sharing with you tonight. So please, you can always call us at the office if you leave this meeting tonight and you have some additional thoughts and consideration for us. We're happy to listen. That's one reason we're not voting on this evening. We want to be able to digest it. So if you didn't feel comfortable making a comment here, you can call the city offices and Susan, our city reporter, here in the orange
Coral.
Hey, I don't know all the colors, all right? It's been longer since I've been around. Pardon?
When will you be voting?
The next council meeting is scheduled, John, in 2 weeks,
August 17th.
August 17th. So you're welcome to attend that meeting. It will be over in the city offices and the council chambers. That's when the final decision will be made. 7:30, we have to start a little bit late because I believe the fire district is having their truth and taxation hearing out. We want to make sure all the council members are there, so. Well, thank you for your comments, John. Anybody electronically have a comment?
Not at this time.
At this point in time, I would like to ask the council if they have any comments they'd like to share with our citizens this evening. Have a comment they'd like to make. Councilmember Extra.
So I want to point out in this grid here, or you've got this pie chart, this is just determined by how much money compared to the whole that each entity gets, right? So you can see like most of it's going to the Weaver School District. Now, one thing that was not clear to me until I kind of dug into this is that does not pay our teachers. That is for facilities that the district is in charge of. So that's all of your schools and all of the support staff and everything like that. The teachers themselves are actually paid by the state. So if you want your teachers to be paid more, then we need to really start pounding on the state legislature. They're who's in charge of that. This is for like the buildings here. Now, each of these entities, I believe, has to have their own hearing like we did. So as you can see, the school board is in charge of Weaver School District. So, attend a school board meeting and give them your input and say, hey, I want to see what you're spending all this money on. Show me the plans. Just like, we've been really transparent in trying to tell you all what our plans are with like our public safety building. We're trying to be really, really careful, really conservative that we only have what the chief says we need. We're not trying to build a Taj Mahal. But we're trying to make sure that they're taken care of. When I look at some of the schools and how they're built, I'm like, that seems like a lot of wasted space. So, I'm a little bit more conservative maybe about the way the schools are built. So, I would really encourage you to show up to some of these other meetings. Go to the school board and say, hey, show me these plans that you're doing for these schools, and let's see if maybe we can do these a little less expensively. We are in a crazy building time now where construction costs are so high, so we just want to, our goal is not to please anybody. We're not trying to take anybody. We don't want to put anybody in the poorhouse. We don't want to have anybody have a problem, with, feeding themselves or housing themselves if a tax increase is gonna do it. One thing about maintaining the rate also, you can appeal your valuation. That is one thing that you can actually, when you get your property tax notice, there is an appeal form on there. So you can actually say to the county, I think you're assessing my house too much. So there is some recourse, as far as that goes on your property valuation. So those were just some thoughts that I have as far as that goes.
Thank you, Councilmember Exton. I would just put a word of caution out there. When I looked at my assessed value, it's $140,000 less than my house is worth. So they may reassess you at a higher value too. So have your facts in place before you go to the county. And if they've overvalued it, go for it, but make sure you know before you go there. I don't know if they would actually increase somebody's value though, John, but it is the government, so. Any other council member have a comment they'd like to make this evening? I would like to clear up one thing. I had this question asked. This proposed tax increase has nothing to do with the building of the public safety building. This year, the council challenged the city department heads to budget to the fact that we had excess revenues over existing collections to pay that potential bond. Now, we don't have a final cost, we don't know the final interest rate, but we believe that we have in the budget from current revenues collected adequate to pay for a bond. So I just want to clarify that this tax increase discussion that we're having has nothing to do with the new public safety building and the public potential bonding to build that building. I just want to clarify that. Okay, seeing no other comments from the public or from council tonight, I would look for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Councilmember Stoker has made a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do we have a second? All right, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your attendance.